The Aravieli people had spent weeks preparing for the arrival of their expected guests. Their world was known for calm oceans, soft skies, and a lifestyle that avoided conflict for thousands of years. Everything about their society was peaceful. Even arguments were rare. So when their long-range sensors picked up a fleet approaching, they believed it was the friendly envoy they had been expecting. They decorated the landing fields with glowing banners. They polished the white stone walkways until they reflected the soft blue sunlight. Musicians rehearsed their gentle welcome songs, and officials practiced polite greetings. Every detail was planned. The Aravieli wanted their visitors to feel comfortable and respected, but as the ships drew closer, the first signs of confusion appeared. The vessels didn't match the design of the Federation delegation they were expecting. Those ships should have been smooth, round, and bright. The ones approaching were sharp-edged, dark, and covered in something that looked like battle scars at first. The council told everyone it was nothing to worry about. Sometimes diplomatic ships were replaced without warning. But a quiet worry began spreading among the citizens. The approaching ships looked tough, not elegant, not peaceful. They looked like ships built by beings who expected trouble everywhere they went. The Aravieli were not used to such things. Their world had no predators, no wars, no natural disasters. Violence was something they only read about in old historical texts. So when they saw the stranger ships cut through the sky, leaving streaks of fire behind them, many locals stepped back nervously. Still, the council kept smiling, telling everyone to remain calm. They believed the visitors were simply from a distant part of the Federation, perhaps a group with a different culture or older models of technology. There is always an explanation, the council members said. The Aravieli had never met a species that wasn't peaceful, so their minds didn't even consider the possibility. They continued their welcome preparations, but the feeling in the air changed. The musicians played slower. The workers walked with less confidence. And even though no one said it aloud, almost everyone felt the same thing. Something is different this time. When the ships finally entered the atmosphere, their engines roared in a way the Aravieli had never heard before. It wasn't a soft humming sound like the Federation vessels made. It was louder, deeper, as if the ships themselves were growling. Dust flew across the fields, and the gentle creatures of the planet darted away in fear. The counselors stood at the front of the welcome platform, their robes fluttering in the wind. They tried to stay steady, but even they felt their hearts beating faster. Then the first ship landed. The ground shook slightly under its weight. The Aravieli watched as the landing ramp touched the ground. A few council members leaned forward, expecting beings similar to themselves. Tall, lean, soft-skinned, peaceful in every movement. Instead, the visitors who emerged were nothing like that. They walked with strong, steady steps, as if they were used to moving through dangerous places. Their bodies looked tough, shaped by a life of fighting storms, climbing rugged terrains, and facing challenges every single day. Their faces held an alertness the Aravieli had never seen before, an awareness of everything around them. The Aravieli whispered to each other in shock. These beings looked like predators, not in a monstrous way, but in the way they carried themselves confident, unafraid, and ready for anything. The first thing that truly frightened the Aravieli, though, happened just a few moments later. Their planet's air contained chemicals that could irritate even the strongest visiting species. Most guests wore protective suits, but these visitors, they walked out with no helmets, no masks, not even a thin layer of protection. They breathed the air deeply, as if it were perfectly normal. One council member nearly fainted. Another stepped backward and whispered, "How can they breathe that? It should hurt them." But the visitors didn't seem bothered at all. They were actually smiling, and that was when a rumor spread through the crowd. Only one type of species acts like that. Deathworlders. The Aravieli had heard stories whispers shared between star travelers. Stories about a species from a violent planet full of storms, diseases, and deadly creatures. A species that learned to survive everything their harsh world threw at them. A species that didn't fear danger, because danger was simply a part of their daily life. The stories always described them as unpredictable, tougher than any other species in the galaxy, capable of surviving conditions that would kill others instantly. But no one ROVL had ever actually seen one. They thought such stories were exaggerated myths. No. Watching the visitors stand under the harsh sun without blinking, that old rumor began to feel very real. The Aruvieli attempted to begin the welcome ceremony, but their voices trembled slightly. The visitors listened politely, but there was something intense about the way they observed everything. Their eyes scanned every corner, every movement, as though expecting danger to appear at any moment. The Aruvieli couldn't understand it. Why did these beings look ready for battle on a peaceful planet? Why did they move with such careful precision? Why did their muscles remain tense even during a friendly greeting? And most importantly, who were they really? The council had assumed they were diplomats. But diplomats didn't arrive in scratched, armored ships. Diplomats didn't walk like soldiers trained to survive on deadly worlds. Diplomats didn't breathe toxic air as casually as breathing fresh spring wind, slowly. The truth began forming in the minds of the Aruvieli. These visitors were not the ones they had been expecting. They were something else. Something far more mysterious. Something far more powerful. The Aruvieli felt a mix of fear and fascination. They had prepared songs, gifts, and gentle speeches, but now all they could think about was what these beings might do next. As the visitors stepped forward, closing the distance between the two species, the crowd held its breath. The Aruvieli had always believed the galaxy was full of peace. But in that moment, watching these strange newcomers approach, they realized something they had never considered before. Not all life in the galaxy was gentle, not all worlds were safe, and not all visitors came from places that shaped them with kindness. The visitors stopped a few steps away from the council. Their leader stepped forward and spoke in a deep, calm voice. "We come in peace." The words were simple, friendly, yet even those simple words felt powerful too. Powerful coming from beings who looked like they could walk through fire without slowing down. And as the Aruvieli exchanged nervous glances, one thought spread through every mind present. If these beings truly meant peace, everyone on Aruviel would be safe. But if they didn't, nothing could protect them. The arrival of the Deathworlders had begun. And the Aruvieli had no idea what this meeting would lead to. The moment the visitors stepped fully onto Aruviel's soft ground, the atmosphere around the landing field changed. The Aruvieli had spent their whole lives surrounded by calm voices, gentle movements, and predictable routines. So the presence of these newcomers, who carried themselves with quiet strength and alert eyes, felt almost overwhelming. They didn't seem dangerous exactly, not aggressive, but everything about them suggested a life very different from the soft existence the Aruvieli knew. The way they placed their feet firmly, as though always ready to move. The way their eyes scanned the area, not in fear but in habit. Like people who had learned early in life that awareness meant safety. The Aruvieli delegation walked forward slowly, trying to remind themselves that different didn't mean threatening. The leader of the council gave a small, nervous smile and motioned toward the city in the distance, hoping to guide the visitors toward the planned welcome ceremony. The visitors nodded politely and fell into step, but even then, their movements were so steady and balanced that watching them felt like watching trained explorers rather than guests. As the group began walking, the Aruvieli couldn't help but whisper among themselves. "Why do they walk like that?" One asked softly. Another replied, "Maybe their world has stronger gravity?" Someone else murmured, "Or maybe their world is more dangerous than ours." Even the calmest citizens were curious now. The rumor about Deathworlders had spread so quickly that nearly everyone in the crowd had heard it. Many didn't believe. Its stories often grew more dramatic with each retelling, but the way the visitors breathed the air without hesitation made the old tales feel a little more real. The Arovieli normally avoided staring, but today they couldn't help themselves. Everything about these newcomers drew attention. Their clothing wasn't decorative or ceremonial like the Aruvieli robes. It was practical thick materials, reinforced seams, pockets for tools. Their boots looked like they were made for rocky ground, not the smooth, polished paths of Aruviel. Some of them carried small devices attached to their belts, blinking with tiny blue lights. Nothing looked dangerous, but everything looked purposeful. The council tried to start light conversation as they walked, hoping to ease the tension. The visitors responded politely, but their replies were short and straightforward. They didn't seem used to long, decorative speeches. When the council commented on the planet's gentle climate, one visitor simply nodded and said, "It's peaceful here." The words were sincere, but the tone was almost puzzled, as if peace was something that felt unusual to them. The Arovieli couldn't understand what kind of world produced people who reacted like that. In their culture, peace wasn't something to question. It was the foundation of their lives. As the group continued, children peeked from behind their parents, curious about the newcomers. One child stepped a bit too close, and the visitor nearest turned his head instantly, reacting with almost unbelievable speed. It wasn't aggressive, just alert. He relaxed when he saw it was only a child, giving a small smile. But the Aruvieli adults exchanged uneasy looks. Who reacted that fast unless they were used to real danger? Still, nothing about the visitors' behavior suggested they meant harm. In fact, they showed respect in every small action. They walked at a pace the Aruvieli could match. They didn't poke or scan anything without permission. They stayed close, but not too close. They listened carefully whenever someone spoke. It was the contrast between their politeness and their intensity that confused everyone. When the group reached the city gates, a gentle breeze flowed through the open plaza. The visitors glanced around, their eyes taking in the clean walkways, the plant-covered buildings, and the floating lanterns shaped like soft, glowing spheres. One of the visitors paused for a moment, as if appreciating the calmness. Another tilted their head slightly, as though trying to understand how such a peaceful place could exist at all. Inside the city, crowds had gathered on the skywalks and balconies to watch the new arrivals. The Arovieli rarely saw unfamiliar species, so this was an event the whole population wanted to witness. People whispered, pointed, and hurried to tell others what they saw. The welcome hall had been prepared with soft music and fruit, dishes arranged in delicate patterns. Colorful lights drifted in slow circles overhead. Everything was designed to make guests feel comfortable. But as the visitors entered, some Aruvieli realized the same thing at the same time. Peaceful beauty might not be the way to impress beings who came from a harsher world. Still, the council began the greeting speech they had rehearsed. The words were warm, polite, full of gratitude and excitement. The visitors listened respectfully, but their eyes continued to drift around the room, taking in every detail. One Aruvieli standing nearby whispered to another, "Do they not like our ceremony?" The other answered softly, "I don't think they dislike it. I think they just notice everything. Maybe they have to." The welcome music played softly in the background, its gentle rhythm almost too delicate compared to the firm presence of the visitors. When refreshments were offered, the visitors examined everything with care before trying it. Not with suspicion, more like people who had learned to be cautious for practical reasons. A few minutes later, something unexpected happened. One visitor reached out and touched a hanging lantern, watching it float gently under their fingers. The movement was small and simple, but it made several Aravieli relax a little. It showed curiosity. It showed openness. It showed that beneath their strong exterior, these visitors were capable of appreciating small wonders. Gradually, the tension in the room softened. The Aravieli began asking questions in cautious, friendly ways, where the visitors came from, how long their journey was, what their homeworld was like. The visitors answered with short but honest descriptions. They said their planet had strong winds, tall mountains, deep oceans, storms that came without warning, and wildlife that required respect more than fear. They didn't describe anything dangerous in a frightening way. They spoke about such things the same way someone from a calm world talked about rain or sunshine. To the Aravieli, it sounded like a constant struggle. To the visitors, it sounded normal. The more they talked, the clearer it became that these newcomers didn't see extraordinary. They didn't behave like warriors or heroes. They behaved like people simply shaped by their environment, people who had learned to stay alert, stay aware, and stay ready because that was what life demanded. This realization surprised the Aravieli. They had expected the visitors to be either dangerous or unfriendly, but instead they were simply different. Strong, yes. Alert, yes. But also polite, curious, and willing to understand new cultures. The council felt their worries slowly shifting into something else, not fear, but fascination. If these visitors had truly come from a harder world, then perhaps their strength wasn't something to fear. Perhaps it was something that could help, something that could inspire. As the conversation continued, the visitors began asking their own questions. They wanted to know how the Aravieli built their floating structures, how their energy systems worked, and why the planet's wildlife was so gentle. They were genuinely interested, showing a side that felt almost warm. At one point, a small creature, soft, furry, and harmless, wandered into the hall. It approached one of the visitors without fear and sat beside their boot. The visitor looked down with a surprised smile, gently reaching out to let the creature sniff their hand. The crowd around them relaxed further. It was a simple moment, but it warmed the room like sunlight. Slowly, the Aravieli realized something important. These beings might have come from a harsh world, but that didn't make them harsh themselves. It simply made them strong. Toward the end of the gathering, the council finally asked the question everyone had been wondering. What brings you to our world? The visitors exchanged a look, a calm, thoughtful pause, before one of them answered softly. We came because we intercepted a signal. We believed someone here might need help. The room grew still. Help? The Aravieli had prepared for diplomacy, not rescue. No distress signal had been sent from their surface, at least not by their people. A quiet unease passed through the council. If the signal hadn't come from them, then who or what had sent it? The visitors continued in the same calm voice. We didn't come to cause trouble. We came to make sure no one here was in danger. Those words settled gently into the minds of everyone present. The visitors' strength was not meant to frighten. It was meant for protection. But the most surprising part was this. They had traveled across the galaxy to help strangers. The Aravieli realized that maybe they had misunderstood these newcomers. Not all powerful beings were threats. Some were shields. Some were guardians. And as the sun outside dipped lower and warm evening lights began glowing across the city, the Aravieli found themselves seeing the visitors in a new way, not as Deathworlders to fear, but as allies they hadn't expected. Still, one question remained in the minds of everyone present. If a distress signal had truly come from their world, what was it warning them about? The welcome hall slowly became quieter as the visitors' last words settled into everyone's minds. The Aravieli stood still, unsure how to react. They had expected a calm diplomatic meeting, maybe some cultural exchanges, maybe a treaty. They had not expected strangers from a far-off world to tell them they had come because of a distress signal. A signal no Aruvieli remembered sending. The council looked at one another, confused and uneasy. But the visitors didn't seem tense or dramatic about it. They spoke with the steady calm of people who faced strange situations all the time. The Aruvieli noticed something else, too. Whenever the topic shifted toward danger, the visitors seemed almost familiar with it, as if danger was not something unusual, but something that belonged in everyday life. The council leader cleared their throat gently, taking a step closer. "You said you came because someone might need help. Can you explain more?" The visitor who had spoken earlier nodded. "We received a signal from this region of space. It wasn't very clear. It sounded old. But distress signals are never ignored." The Aruvieli exchanged quiet glances. Their people lived peaceful lives. Their last emergency of any kind had been hundreds of years ago, and even then, it had been a minor technical issue, not something worth sending a distress call across the galaxy. But before anyone could ask more, one of the visitors added softly, "Deathworlder ships always respond to calls for help, no matter how faint." The word hung in the air, Deathworlder. The Aruvieli still felt nervous whenever they heard it. The visitors didn't look offended. They didn't even seem surprised. They spoke about their reputation as if it were nothing new. One of the Aruvieli technicians, trying to understand more, stepped forward. "Your world. Is it truly a place filled with danger?" The visitors exchanged a small look, the kind people share when they're deciding how much of the truth to tell. Then one of them gave a quiet chuckle, not mocking, just honest. "Our world is lively," they said with a small smile. "The weather can get rough. The wildlife is strong. The land shifts sometimes. We learn to adapt." The Aruvieli waited, expecting more. The visitor continued, "Our storms can uproot trees. The seas can rise higher than mountains. Creatures in the forests can outrun, outclimb, or outsmart you if you're not careful. And illnesses. Well, we've learned to handle those too." The Aruvieli listened with wide eyes. Everything the visitors described sounded like something from an old legend, not something a real species could survive every day. "And you grew up in such a place?" Another council member asked softly. The visitor nodded, unfazed. "Everyone does. We learn early how to protect ourselves and each other." The Aruvieli felt a strange mixture of fear and admiration. The visitors didn't seem proud of their harsh world. They simply accepted it. They talked about storms and dangerous creatures the way Aruvieli talked about light, breezes and floating gardens. Maybe that was why they moved with such alertness. Maybe that was why their eyes scanned every corner. Maybe that was why they could breathe harsh air without worry. It wasn't because they wanted to be intimidating. It was because their world had shaped them that way. As the conversation went on, the visitors shared more about their home. They described mountains covered in white ice, where one wrong step could mean slipping into a deep crevice. They talked about forests where plants grew fast and wild, and sometimes even the plants could sting or burn if touched carelessly. But they also talked about beauty. They spoke of skies painted orange at sunset. Of oceans so deep they seemed endless, of places where tiny glowing insects lit up the night like stars. The Aruvieli listened with quiet wonder. These beings came from a world that tested them constantly, yet they still found beauty in it. They still loved it. That part amazed the Aruvieli more than anything. After some time, the council invited the visitors to sit and rest. The hall's soft seats formed a gentle circle. The visitors sat, though they did so like individuals who never fully relaxed back straight, eyes aware. Hands calm, but ready. An Aruvieli historian took this moment to ask something that had been on many minds. Are the stories true? The ones about how your people survive things that would harm others? The visitors didn't answer immediately. One of them tilted their head slightly, thinking, "It's not that we're stronger than others," they finally said. "We just learn to keep going, even when things get difficult." Another added quietly, "Pain, fear, hardship, none of those stop us. We're used to pushing through them." The Aravieli nodded slowly, trying to understand. To them, a life filled with danger sounded unbearable. But to these visitors, it seemed normal. One Aravieli, braver than most, asked, "Do you ever get scared?" The visitor closest turned to them, surprise flickering in their eyes. "Of course. Everyone gets scared. Fear is part of staying alive. But we don't let it stop us." A small silence followed, gentle, thoughtful. The Arovili realized something important. The visitors weren't fearless. They were simply courageous. They acted even when afraid. That kind of courage felt almost invisible in a peaceful world like Aruville. It was like a muscle the Aravieli had never needed to grow. Curiosity pulled the conversation in a new direction. Someone asked, "If your world is so dangerous, how did you begin traveling the stars?" The visitors chuckled again, as if they'd heard that question many times. "When you grow up in a place where everything challenges you," one said, "you learn to challenge things back. You learn to explore, to try, to keep moving forward." Another added, "We didn't travel the stars because it was easy. We did it because we wanted to understand more, because we're curious, and because helping others matters to us." This made the Aravieli pause. Helping others. That seemed so strange for a species known as Deathworlders. One council member finally asked what everyone was thinking. "If your people are so strong, does that mean you fight a lot?" The visitors shook their heads immediately. "We don't seek fights. We avoid them if we can, but we defend when we must." There was no pride or aggression in the answer, just honesty. Then one of them spoke in a quieter voice. "Strength isn't meant to harm. Strength is meant to protect." The hall became completely silent. Even the music in the background felt softer. The Aruvieli looked at the visitors, seeing them differently now. Not as dangerous beings, but as individuals shaped by resilience, shaped by survival, shaped by a world that demanded toughness, but there was gentleness in them. Curiosity, compassion, a willingness to help. That part surprised the Aruvieli the most. After a few moments, the conversation returned to the distress signal. The visitors explained everything they knew, how the message had been faint, broken, and very old. They weren't sure who sent it or why, but they had traveled across the stars anyway, simply because someone might need help. That simple fact touched the Aruvieli deeply. Not many species would fly across the galaxy for strangers. The hall slowly grew quieter as the evening turned into night. The floating lights shifted to warm colors. The visitors seemed calmer now, more comfortable. The Aruvieli too had relaxed. Fear had softened into curiosity, and curiosity had grown into a quiet respect. And yet, one worry remained. If no Aruvieli had sent a distress signal, and if the visitors had not misunderstood it, who did send it? And what kind of danger had caused someone to call for help long ago? The question lingered in everyone's heart, because if there was something hidden beneath their peaceful world, they might soon need the very strength these visitors carried so effortlessly. The evening lights of Aruville glowed softly across the city as the visitors finished explaining the distress signal. The council tried to stay calm, but everyone felt an uneasy weight settling in their chests. A distress signal meant danger, but this was Aruville, a place known for peace. Nothing dangerous ever happened here. At least, that was what they had always believed. The visitors didn't look alarmed, only thoughtful. They had the kind of expression people wear when facing something familiar, not frightening. It made the Aravieli wonder what kind of life created such calm in the face of uncertainty. The council invited them to walk outside so everyone could get fresh air. Even though the night was peaceful and warm, the Aravieli needed the open sky to clear their minds. As they stepped outside, the visitors instinctively looked up at the stars. Their eyes followed the shapes of distant galaxies with quiet understanding, as though they had traveled among those stars many times. One visitor pointed toward a faint cluster of lights and said softly, "That's where we first picked up the signal." The Aravieli followed their gaze, their hearts tightening. The stars looked harmless, but knowing a mysterious call for help had come from that direction made the night feel different. The council leader spoke carefully. "We have checked our records. No distress signal was sent by our people. Are you certain it came from near our world?" "We checked every possibility," the visitor replied. "It was weak, but its path led here. We couldn't ignore it." The Aravieli believed them. The visitors didn't speak with the excitement of discovery. They spoke with responsibility. It was clear they were not the kind of people who turned away when danger threatened others. Still, the Aravieli were confused. Their planet had been peaceful for centuries. Nothing unusual had been detected. No one was missing. No old warnings had been recorded. Everything seemed normal. As the conversation continued, the visitors noticed something about the land around the city, something the Aravieli had long stopped paying attention to. The ground was warm. Not uncomfortably warm, just warmer than usual. The air held a slight vibration, so faint that only the most sensitive species would notice. The Aravieli had always assumed it was normal tiny shifts in the planet's crust, nothing more. But the visitors paused, exchanged a quiet glance, and touched the ground with their hands. One of them said, almost to themselves, "This doesn't feel like simple heat." The council grew worried. "What do you mean?" The visitor didn't want to alarm them, so they spoke gently. "Sometimes on worlds like ours, warmth beneath the ground can mean large underground systems. Caves, tunnels, or movement." Movement. The word sank into the air like a stone sinking into water. The Aravieli swallowed nervously. Their planet had been studied many times over the years. They believed everything beneath the surface was stable. But the visitors didn't seem convinced. Another visitor stepped away from the group and knelt down, placing a small scanning device on the grass. The machine hummed softly, sending waves deep into the ground. The Aravieli watched, growing more anxious with each passing second. When the device beeped, the visitor's expression hardened slightly, but not with fear. More like recognition. "There are enormous spaces under your land," they said quietly. "Deep ones, long ones, like tunnels." The Aravieli froze. They had no record of such caves. Their ancestors had mapped the ground long ago and found nothing. But the visitor continued, "These tunnels are old, very old, and something beneath them shifts." The last word made several Aravieli step back instinctively, even though the visitors weren't raising alarms. The tone of their voice carried experience with things waking up, things moving underground, things hidden for too long. The council tried to keep the moment under control. "Perhaps it is natural movement," they suggested weakly. "It might be," the visitor replied kindly. "But natural or not, it should be understood. You deserve to know what lies beneath your feet." Their calmness was comforting, but it didn't erase the tension. The Aravieli had never felt afraid of their own planet before. Seeing their worry, one visitor added softly, "We haven't come to frighten you. We came because we care. Help is something we offer freely." Those words eased the atmosphere a little. Still, the mystery of the tunnels remained like a quiet shadow. The council decided to show the visitors more of their world. They believed that perhaps by learning about Aruviel, the visitors might understand where the signal truly came from. So the group walked through the city. The Aruvieli showed them the floating gardens, the shimmering water streams, the tall white towers that glowed softly. The visitors admired everything carefully, but even while watching the beauty around them, they always seemed to be thinking. They continued scanning small sections of the ground, checking readings, observing tiny details that the Aruvieli had always ignored. Whenever the visitors found something unusual, small tremors, strange mineral patterns, faint heat pockets, they exchanged glances that said more than words. The Aruvieli noticed these glances. They realized something. The visitors were starting to suspect the distress signal hadn't been a mistake. Later that night, a council invited the visitors to a quiet resting chamber. Food was offered, soft seats were arranged, and gentle music filled the background. The Aruvieli wanted to make them comfortable, but the visitors sat tall, as if their bodies didn't truly know how to rest. One of the Aruvieli asked gently, "Do you not sit comfortably?" The visitors smiled faintly. "We do. But where we come from, staying aware becomes a habit. You never fully relax until everything is safe." The Aruvieli realized how different their lives were. Here, safety was assumed. For the visitors, safety was earned. As they talked, the visitors shared more stories about their world. They told the Aruvieli how their ancestors survived unpredictable storms by building strong shelters, how they learned to work together because facing danger alone was never enough, how they protected each other fiercely, not out of fear, but out of love. "We're not strong because we like to be," one visitor said softly. "We're strong because our people depend on us." Those words touched the Aruvieli deeply. It made the visitors feel less like mysterious beings and more like people with hearts shaped by hardship, but gentle in their actions. Slowly, the Aruvieli understood something important. The visitors' strength was not meant to intimidate. It was meant to protect. That realization softened the last bits of fear inside them. They began asking questions freely now. "Do you help other worlds often?" "As often as needed," a visitor replied. "Aid is part of our duty. What if the danger is too big?" "Then we face it anyway." The Aruvieli listened closely, feeling a strange comfort in these answers. By the time the night grew late, something unexpected happened. The visitors' expressions softened too. Their shoulders relaxed a little. Their voices grew less formal. For the first time, they seemed to feel safe here. One visitor looked at the floating gardens glowing outside and said quietly, "Your world is beautiful. It deserves to stay safe." That simple sentence carried more reassurance than any promise. But beneath that warmth, a quiet truth remained. The distress signal was real. The tunnels under the planet were real. The shifting beneath the ground was real. Whatever lay beneath Aruviel was waking, and deep inside, the Aruvieli knew something with full certainty. They were going to need the visitors, not because the visitors were strong, but because the visitors understood danger in ways the Aruvieli never could. The bond between the two species was forming naturally, quietly, gently. And though no one said it aloud, everyone felt the same silent thought rising within them. Whatever comes next, they would not face it alone. When the humans began studying the strange signal again, their faces quietly changed. They didn't speak right away, but the Aruvieli experts standing near them felt a subtle tension in the air. These humans, who normally stayed relaxed even in uncertain situations, were suddenly focused in a way that made everyone nervous. The Aruvieli leader asked if something was wrong, but the humans only said they needed a little more time to understand the data. They moved their small devices around, set up scanners, and compared readings from earlier days. Their movements were fast but controlled. almost like people who had practiced dealing with unexpected problems all their lives. The Aravieli watched every step, trying not to look too scared. Though their soft skin shifted colors slightly, a natural sign of growing worry among their species. After almost an hour, the human technician spoke in a calm voice and explained that the distress signal wasn't coming from the surface. It was coming from deep under the ground, far below the city and its peaceful gardens. The Aravieli were puzzled at first. Their sensors had never shown anything dangerous under the surface. Their planet was known for its quiet nature, stable land, mild climate, and very low geological activity. Nothing ever moved down there. The humans shared a different view. Their scanning machines could read deeper, using techniques the Aravieli had never developed. According to the humans, there were huge empty spaces under the crust. Not just natural caves, but something older carved, shaped, or formed long before the Aravieli built their cities. The shapes were too smooth to be random. The patterns were too regular. The humans explained it gently, not wanting to alarm anyone, but the meaning was clear. Someone or something had been beneath Aruviel for a very long time. The Aravieli Council gathered immediately. Their long limbs trembled lightly as they discussed possibilities. Some believed their ancestors might have built these structures, but there were no records. Others feared an unknown species had been sleeping there. Most simply felt confused, because their planet had always been calm and predictable. Nothing about Aruviel suggested danger. It was a gentle world with gentle life, but the distress signal made everything uncertain. The humans didn't waste time. They began preparing a safe exploration plan. They offered to investigate first, saying their bodies and training made them better prepared. The Aravieli refused at first, out of politeness and fear for their guests. But the humans insisted firmly, yet kindly. They said this situation might involve risks, and it was better for those used to harsh environments to handle the early stage. It wasn't bragging. It was simply practical. And the Aravieli understood. The next morning, the humans gathered at the entrance of the deepest cave the Aravieli had ever mapped. Normally, it was a quiet area used for studying minerals. Now it felt like the doorway to something unknown. The Aravieli scientists stayed outside with scanning tools, watching every movement with wide, glowing eyes. The humans walked in with lights attached to their suits, each step sure and steady. Hours passed. The Aravieli waited, whispering softly among themselves, wondering what the humans were seeing. Every now and then, their radios made a soft crackle. The humans' voices remained calm, giving updates without panic. They spoke about deeper tunnels, thick walls, smooth surfaces, strange patterns that looked almost like long-gone life forms once lived there. Nothing harmful had happened, but the atmosphere grew heavier as they went deeper. Finally, after what felt like a full day, the humans came back. Their suits were dusty, their expressions serious but not afraid. They explained quietly that the underground structures were not natural at all. Something had built them, something large and ancient. And parts of the walls carried faint energy signatures, meaning they had once held machines or devices long since dead. The Aravieli felt a cold wave of fear, something new to them. They had no memory of other species living here before them. Their elders had always told them that Aruviel was calm from the beginning of time. The humans didn't make them panic. Instead, they focused on what mattered, understanding the signal. They explained that the distress message wasn't a warning from something alive. It seemed more like a leftover automated signal, a call for help sent thousands of years ago, still repeating because its system had never been shut off. This gave some relief. If the signal was ancient, maybe whatever created it was long gone. But when the humans showed the latest seismic readings, everyone understood the real issue. Something under the ground had shifted. Not a creature or living thing, but the structures themselves. Parts were collapsing slowly, creating small tremors that the Aruvieli sensors were too weak to detect. Those movements could eventually damage. The cities above the Aruvieli felt overwhelmed by the idea. Their society was not used to sudden threats. They lived in harmony with nature, not expecting their peaceful world to change without warning. Many worried what would happen to their families, their floating gardens, their glowing forests, and their cities shaped like soft domes. The humans stepped forward with simple, clear reassurance. They said they could help stabilize the underground areas to prevent any harm. They had tools, knowledge, and plenty of experience dealing with unstable environments. On their own world, they often faced shifting ground, storms, floods, and dangerous terrain. For them, this kind of work was challenging, but not frightening. The Aruvieli could not hide their amazement. These humans, who looked small compared to most Aruvieli, carried such quiet confidence. It wasn't the confidence of someone trying to look strong. It was the confidence of someone who knew what was needed and simply did it. The next several days felt like a festival of cooperation. The humans set up support structures deep underground, using portable devices that expanded into strong frames. The Aruvieli engineers, though nervous, helped by providing energy sources and mapping data. Together, they formed groups that moved like one team, despite being from completely different worlds. Many Aruvieli followed the humans around, asking questions. They were fascinated by how humans balanced caution with bravery. A simple tool in human hands looked like a part of their body, natural and controlled. Even when a human slipped slightly on a loose rock, they recovered instantly, laughing it off, while the Aruvieli watchers panicked. Slowly, the underground chambers became stable again. The humans explained that the structures were safe for now, though they needed monitoring. They also recommended sealing certain deeper areas to prevent any future collapse. When the work was done, the Aruvieli invited the humans to a wide-open field near the capital, where great lights lit up the sky like soft stars. It was their way of showing gratitude. The humans sat peacefully among them, eating warm, glowing fruit the Aruvieli offered. They enjoyed the gentle wind, the soft ground, and the calm atmosphere. One Aruvieli elder spoke to them, saying they had changed the way the Aruvieli saw humans. Before meeting them, they only heard stories describing humans as fierce, dangerous survivors. But after working together, the Aruvieli had seen a different truth. Yes, humans were strong. Yes, they could handle things no other species could. But they used that strength to protect, to help, to guide. The humans answered with modesty, saying they only did what anyone should do when they find someone who needs help. They said being strong meant nothing unless that strength was shared with others. That night, many Aruvieli looked at the stars differently. They felt safer knowing such a species existed in the galaxy. They felt calmer knowing they now had allies who were not afraid of the unknown. And deep under the ground, in the ancient, empty halls, the last echoes of the old distress signal faded into silence. The planet slept peacefully again, not after many days of working together. The humans and the Aruvieli finally reached a calm point. The underground structures were stable, the strange signal had stopped repeating, and the planet no longer felt like it was hiding a secret. The Aruvieli cities returned to their everyday rhythm. Their lights glowed softly again, their gardens floated peacefully in the air, and their high towers shimmered with soft colors under the sun. But even though life looked normal from the outside, everyone felt changed inside. The Aruvieli citizens kept talking about the humans everywhere, at the gathering halls, in the markets, near the learning centers, even across the bridges that crossed their shining rivers. They told stories about how the humans walked into the deep underground tunnels without fear, how they used calm voices during tense moments, how they helped even when no one could offer them anything in return. Some said the humans had hearts made of fire. Others said they had spirits that refused to break. But most of them simply said the humans were different, in ways the galaxy had never seen. The humans, on the other hand, didn't act like heroes. They moved through the city quietly, spending time with the Aruvieli children, teaching them small Earth games, showing them simple tricks with magnets and small tools. They asked questions about Aruvieli culture, the glowing plants, the floating stones, the delicate way the Aruvieli used sound to communicate emotion. They didn't behave like powerful beings from a dangerous world. Instead, they behaved like guests who wanted to learn and understand. One evening, the Aruvieli Council invited the humans to a special gathering. It wasn't meant to be grand or formal. Instead, it was held in a wide-open valley lit with floating lanterns that drifted like fireflies. Soft music drifted across the air, made by small crystal instruments that produced gentle tones. The ground was covered with smooth silver grass that shone under blue moonlight. The humans arrived wearing simple clothing, not their suits, because the Aruvieli wanted them to feel relaxed. Many Aruvieli stood waiting, their skin glowing with soft patterns that showed respect and warmth. As the humans entered the valley, the patterns grew brighter. It was the Aruvieli way of saying thank you. The council leader stepped forward and spoke slowly, because they wanted every word to matter. They explained that the Aruvieli had lived peacefully for thousands of years and had never known any species like the humans. They spoke about bravery, kindness, and how the humans had shown strength without pride and leadership without force. They said the Aruvieli believed the humans came at exactly the right moment, like the universe had written a path for them to meet. The humans listened quietly, a little shy at the attention. One of them stepped forward, rubbing the back of their neck in an embarrassed way. They said they didn't see themselves as heroes. They explained that where they came from, solving problems and helping others was just part of life. Earth had taught them that nothing stayed easy, so they had to stay ready to protect what mattered. They told the Aruvieli that helping a peaceful civilization like theirs was not a burden. It was an honor. The Aruvieli felt a wave of emotion that crossed their entire gathering. Their bodies glowed with soft blue marks, a sign of deep gratitude. The council leader presented the humans with a symbol of friendship, small crystal spheres filled with swirling light. These spheres were rare, made only for moments of great importance. The humans accepted them carefully, understanding the meaning behind them, even if they had never seen such objects before. After the ceremony, everyone sat on the glowing grass and shared food. The Aruvieli brought soft fruits that tasted like honey and cool drinks that sparkled softly when touched. The humans shared dried earth snacks, which amused the Aruvieli because they were crunchy and unfamiliar. The children from both species sat together, laughing and pointing at the stars. As the night grew deeper, the humans leaned back and looked up at the sky. The stars above Aruviel were brighter than the ones seen from Earth, and there were more of them. Some humans whispered how beautiful it was. For the first time in many days, they finally let their shoulders relax. It was clear that helping the Aruvieli had taken effort, even if they didn't show it earlier. Now, surrounded by peaceful friends, they allowed themselves to rest. The council leader sat beside the human commander. They spoke softly about the future. The Aruvieli said they wanted to form an official friendship, something lasting and meaningful. They wanted humans to visit often, to teach them new things, and to share knowledge between their worlds. Every Aruvieli in the valley silently hoped the humans would say yes. The human commander didn't answer immediately. He looked around at the glowing trees, the peaceful citizens, the soft wind, and he smiled. He said humans rarely found planets like Aruviel, places that felt calm and gentle. He said humans often traveled to solve problems or survive harsh environments, so finding a world that felt like a warm home was rare for them. He told the council leader that humans would be honored to stay connected with Aruviel. The moment he said that, soft lights burst across the valley. The Aruvieli had triggered a tradition. They released tiny floating seeds into the air, each glowing in different colors. The seeds drifted upward like small stars, creating a sky filled with rainbow lights. The humans watched with wide eyes, amazed. It felt like watching the universe celebrate a new friendship. Over the next days, humans and Aruvieli worked on plans together. They discussed building small joint research stations, creating a shared knowledge exchange, and opening a safe travel route between Earth and Aruviel. The Aruvieli scientists were excited to learn about human engineering, while humans were excited to study Aruvieli energy crystals and their gentle biological systems. The galaxy slowly began to hear about this unusual bond. Other civilizations had always viewed humans with caution, sometimes even fear, because of their reputation as Deathworlders. But the news from Aruviel told a different story, one of cooperation and kindness. Messages began arriving from distant planets, asking to understand humans better, to speak with them directly, and to see whether the stories were true. The Aruvieli happily explained what they had seen. They described humans as strong but gentle, old but thoughtful, capable but humble. They explained how humans had faced danger underground without causing harm to anyone. They spoke about the humans' laughter, their curiosity, and their way of turning even small moments into meaningful connections. Slowly, the galaxy began to shift its view. Back on Aruviel, the humans prepared to return home, but the departure didn't feel sad. The Aruvieli gathered at the landing site with soft lights floating around them, forming a glowing path that led to the human ship. The humans walked through it slowly, touched by the beauty of the gesture. Before leaving, the commander promised they would return soon. He said Earth would be happy to welcome Aruvieli visitors, and the humans would bring more teams during their next trip, not for protection, but for learning and friendship. The Aruvieli bowed respectfully, their skin shining in bright patterns. They said the humans would always have a home on Aruviel, no matter how far their journeys took them. As the human ship rose into the sky, the Aruvieli watched silently. Their hearts felt full. They knew that something important had happened on their quiet planet, something that would be remembered for generations. A story that would be told under glowing lamps and passed down from elder to child. The humans had come as strangers from a distant death world, but they left as allies, friends, and protectors. And somewhere in the stars, the story of Aruviel and the Deathworlders began spreading, proving that even the toughest species in the galaxy could choose peace, and even the gentlest species could inspire strength.